On Halloween night, 1978, in Haddonfield, Illinois, Laurie Strode fought for her life with nothing more than a knitting needle, a wire hanger, and a kitchen knife. Her friends were dead, and she faced their murder alone. You may recognize Laurie as the main character from John Carpenter's Halloween, a movie that helped set conventions for the slasher genre. An important part of the slasher formula is a group of people, usually young and attractive, who are hunted down and killed one by a seemingly unstoppable monster. These monsters are compelling. They frighten us, they excite us. Often their methods of murder are creative at the same time that they're shocking. But what I love most about slashers are not the monsters. What I love most about slashers is watching badass women take those monsters down. These women are known as the final girls, and they are strong and resilient. Laurie Strode in Halloween, Ellen Ripley in Alien, Nancy Thompson in A Nightmare on Elm Street, Sidney Prescott in Scream. These final girls are iconic and influential. But who is the final girl? The final girl as a concept was originally defined and identified by scholar Carol Clover in her 1992 book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws. Clover explains that the final girl is chased, cornered, and wounded. Audiences watch as she screams, staggers, falls, rises, and screams again. She alone looks death in the face and not only fights back, but does so with ferocity. In the end, the final girl is the one who did not die. But what happens to the final girl after the movie ends? In many sequels and series, the final girl returns to the screen to face the monster yet again. Sometimes she returns again and again and again, but so do audiences. The Halloween franchise has made over $750 million in box offices worldwide, with a total of 12 films. And Laurie Strode will be back on screen in October of 2022. The Scream franchise has made over $700 million with a total of 5 films, most recently appearing in January of 2022. Audiences return and celebrate the final girl, cheering for her as she meets the monster head-on. But that's where the celebration stops. Once the movie is over, once the violence is over, the final girl is left behind. Mainstream media fails to represent her in a life after violence, and instead she is defined only through the trauma of her experiences. These series trap the final girl in a cycle of violence on screen. Again and again, audiences watch as she is chased, cornered, and wounded. And the financial success of these series tell us that ultimately it is violence against the final girl that sells. The final girl is badass as the one who did not die, but audiences lose interest when she becomes the one who survived. This excitement that surrounds the final girl in her experiences of violence and disinterest in her life after violence goes beyond fiction. The final girl reflects attitudes and beliefs about real violence against women, the trauma that follows, and the lives of real survivors. Like the final girl, real women experience violence in ways that are visible and repetitive. And globally, women experience violence at alarming rates. 1 in 3 women have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, most often at the hands of an intimate partner. 80% of women have experienced some form of sexual harassment and/or sexual assault during their lifetime. Evidence also indicates that these statistics have only intensified with the COVID-19 pandemic. And while women experience violence at these amazing rates, only 40% of women who experience violence seek help. turning most often to family or friends rather than to law enforcement or health agencies. One of the reasons that so few women seek help when they experience violence is because their stories are too often degraded, discredited, or altogether silenced when they do speak up. This reality is reflected in The Final Girl as well, even within her own franchise. The 2018 Halloween reboot by David Gordon Green, which takes place 40 years after the events of 1978, shows what happens to Laurie and her long-term effects of violence. However, in it, characters question her experience on that night and talk about whether she exaggerated events or made them up altogether. In one scene, Laurie talks to her granddaughter, Allison, who says that Laurie has harmed her family with her inability to let go of the events of that night. In a pivotal moment, Allison tells Laurie that she needs to say goodbye to Michael and get over it. This conversation reflects the ways that the story of survivors are so often discussed and perceived by others. But it also encourages audiences to consider what it means to be a survivor, both on screen and in real life. In her promotional interviews leading up to the release of the film, actor Jamie Lee Curtis, who played Laurie throughout the entirety of the Halloween series, talks about the character within the context of the hashtag #MeToo movement, which was gaining in momentum during the film's release. Curtis explains that the film shows the long-term after effects of violence and the ways that coping and living with trauma are insufficiently addressed either on screen and in slasher films or in the real lives of women. At the same time that this discussion was happening around the fictional world of The Final Girl, a similar narrative was playing out on the national stage. 1 month before the film's release, in September of 2018, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford testified as part of the Supreme Court confirmation hearings. In her testimony, Dr. Ford described her experience of violent sexual assault as a high school student and all of the ways that that experience has continued to shape and inform her life. During media coverage of the hearings and within the hearings themselves, Dr. Ford's testimony came under intense scrutiny. Sources said that she lacked credibility about events that had happened decades ago. It is disheartening that the stories of survivors continue to be degraded and discredited in these ways. But I also find it encouraging that these conversations are happening publicly. In fact, conversations about the lives of survivors after violence are happening more and more, both within popular culture communities and in the political sphere. In fact, fans have been imagining alternate futures for The Final Girl outside of violence for years, outside of the mainstream. Through creative works like short stories, games, and art, fans have been imagining futures for survivors and talking about their experiences. Across many of these creative works, Final Girls can come together across series, franchises, even timelines to form a community of support and understanding. The 2015 computer game Final Girls, created by artist Kanani Jones under the handle Spidey J, is a great example. Final Girls has been described as a game about life after trauma, and in it, 5 Final Girls come together within a group therapy session. Players earn points by encouraging characters to talk about the mundane parts of their everyday life, but also the ways that their experiences of violence continue to affect them. In the game, Laurie has become a high school English teacher. She enjoys mentoring students and taking her dog out for walks after school. Laurie is still a survivor. She talks about how she watches silly cartoons or paints her nails when she's feeling overwhelmed by memories of her past. But the game no longer defines Laurie only through the violence of that past. Laurie is a pet parent, a teacher, a mentor, and a friend. Creative works like Final Girls give these characters a future outside of the violence that they experience on screen. So, what happens to Laurie after that horror-filled night in 1978? The Halloween franchise may have her meet Michael Myers again and again on screen, but fans have given her an opportunity to live a life that is healthy and happy. There's a lot that we can learn from the final girl and the creative work that she inspires. Fans give voice to survivors, listen to survivors, and support their processes of healing and recovery. Like the final girl, real women deserve our recognition and support. Thank you.